I understand that a lot of religions, including Judaism, for example, have passages in the Old Testament that condone ill treatment of women, but these religions, of course, largely don't condone those kinds of activities any longer. Why do you think that Muslims have held on to these ideas which we now consider to be antiquated for so long?
So once again, I want to emphasize, not all Muslims still practice them, and still that distinction between Islam and Muslims. What makes present-day Islam different from present-day Judaism and present-day Christianity and other religions is that there is a political dimension and a social, cultural dimension that is practiced and still is alive, that in the other two religions, two monotheistic religions, have kind of been left in the past. We have no Christian movement, even though we have very conservative, very orthodox Christian and Jewish movements, but we have none of them trying to implement the law in the Bible and replace the American Constitution with doctrines from the Bible, or the Israeli Constitution with the Talmud. What we are faced with today is still an Islam that has not shed off its political dimension, and at the core of its social cultural dimension is a segregation, a gender segregation, which we in the 21st century find immoral and unacceptable.
Good evening. Current estimates, I think, say that there are about 1 out of every 5 human beings on this earth is a Muslim. And it's often said that Islam is the fastest growing religion. If the claims that you say that Islam is such a terrible religion, why do you think that so many people are remaining in the religion and also it's continuing to grow?
For a doctrine or a philosophy, these are two different arguments. It can be wrong and it can grow. So the fact that it grows and many people are embracing it does not make it into something, into a philosophy or a doctrine that is condonable or acceptable or that improves individual human rights. In the 1930s, Nazism grew extensively, but that doesn't make Nazism right. Afterwards, communism in the Soviet Union became an internationally accepted doctrine, embraced by millions of people, but it didn't make the doctrine right. And all of these doctrines come out of a dissatisfaction with the way things are. For instance, individuals seeking justice will say, let's do it according to the Marxist doctrine or according to the National Socialism doctrine. And today we see people saying, let's do it according to Sharia law. It still doesn't make it right law. Actually, it makes it even more dangerous.
Ma'am, first, thank you very much for your willingness to speak out on this and everything you do. But I also have to ask, you cited the example like the situation in Texas where, with the American boyfriends, the 2 daughters were killed. And I have to ask, in a society like ours that is so focused on allowing parents to bring up their own children and be responsible for their own children's growth, specifically in the United States and in other Western, European and Western countries, what can these countries do to prevent what happened in Texas and other similar atrocities from happening if we do live in this free society that does allow for parents to be responsible for their children?
What our society can do, liberal societies can do, is to enforce the law on the one hand, and on the other hand to educate newcomers, people who did not grow up with individual freedoms and with the philosophy of improving the rights of individuals where men and women are equal, gay and straight people are equal, all of that Western philosophy as it is today, to introduce it to them and to educate them with that. But with this whole idea about multiculturalism, saying that all cultures are equal, all religions are equal, then you create within a liberal society pockets of minorities that are exempted from obligations that everyone else in society has. And that's the challenge, and I think that we have to go back and admit that that form of moral relativism and that kind of complacency may feel good at some ivory tower in some academic place or in Washington, D.C. or in some other political center, but for the individuals within that minority who suffer it every day, it's a different case. And it's hypocritical to live in a society where we're all equal before the law, but one group may subjugate their own individuals because their tradition or their religion or whatever it is that they adhere to lets them do that.
Sorry, yes. I just wanted to ask, I mean, I have a lot of questions for you and a lot of concerns because I myself am an American Muslim who's lived here. And some of the comments that you've made, attacking our Prophet, peace be upon him, and our religion, seem very outrageous. But the thing that I was struck by today was that you didn't cite to any verses of the Quran or any hadith, which what I was expecting you to do. And to the audience, I would like to say that as an American Muslim living here, it's very disturbing for us to be attacked in this way because the way that I practice Islam, and I consider myself a practicing Muslim, I've never disrespected my mother, and I don't expect to be married to somebody against their will. And, I would just like to express to the audience that to learn about Islam, to take, to try to get both sides of the story. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your comment. I want to make a clear distinction. And I think for those of us brought with Islam, we fail to do that. That critical reflection on existing dogmas is not equal to an attack. To say the amputation of hands or the stoning of people for adultery, I think that adultery is bad, but I don't think we should stone people for that. And I think that for those of us born into Islam, if like the followers of other faiths, we stand up and we look at our religion and say, there are some very good things, say, in the spiritual dimension, or in the social or cultural dimensions, but there are some things that violate human rights. There are some things that make our own people become stagnant in their minds. That is not equal to an attack. That's called critical reflection. And instead of repeating the mistakes of past generations, what you do is you move on. And I can see this example happening in Turkey right now, where finally there are some theologians who have carefully started to reconsider what is in the hadith, even if it's a hadith that is sahih, meaning even if there's no controversy that it's the Prophet who said it, so you can improve on that. Second, you challenged me on citing the Quran. Surah chapter 24, verse 2 says, "Flog the adulterer and the adulteress 100 times. Let no compassion move you in a matter prescribed by Allah, and let a party of believers be a witness to the punishment." That's what happened to the girl in Qatif. And you and I think all the Muslims in this room would only feel compassion and be appalled by that punishment. But that can only change if Muslims as individual believers stand up and say, that particular command in the Quran is obsolete. It was made in the 7th century, and we can change that. That's not equal to an attack. That's called critical reflection. And I hope that the Vanderbilt University will teach its students a great deal of that kind of reflection.